Well, all right. So we got an exciting fight card in front of us. Islam Makhachev taking on Arman Tsarukyan for the second time. Now, what a lot of people don't understand or don't know about this fight is that they took place in Russia, in St. Petersburg, in this country right here, in this city right here, just right before the Ukrainian conflict. Now, obviously, I found it very interesting that the UFC never really emphasized that they were in Russia. In a way, they sort of kind of deny or don't want to say that they were in Russia. But for whatever reason, obviously, here we are a couple of years later, 5 years later to be exact. Here we are. We got a big card ahead of us. Kevin Holland taking on Rainier D. Ritter, Beneil Dariush, Renato Moicano, Jiri versus Jamal Hill, of course, Merab versus Umar, and Islam Makhachev taking on Arman Tsarukyan. So, how do I assess this fight? First off, I got to tell you, I think that straight off the bat, Islam Makhachev is the much more well-rounded fighter. There's no doubt about it. Now, the one thing that I do notice about Arman Tsarukyan, he's a little bit green. Not green in terms of top 10 level or top 5 level, but green in terms of championship level. And this is where Islam Makhachev comes in. One thing that Makhachev does really well recently, right? He uses his boxing to get in close range in order to hit him with knees, in order to initiate takedowns, in order to initiate clinches. So this is going to be a very difficult fight for Arman Tsarukyan as a result of that. Now, you look at the flexibility between them, right? I'm going to have to say that I would say, yeah, Islam is probably a lot more flexible than Arman Tsarukyan. And you look at the kicks, right? I think that Islam Makhachev has better looking kicks than, I think he's got better looking kicks than Arman Tsarukyan. I think there's going to be a lot of big scramble exchanges in this fight and something to really take into consideration, right? But I think the wrestling exchanges are going to favor Islam Makhachev. I'm going to have to say that, you know what? I think Islam Makhachev is going to submit Arman Tsarukyan sometime in the 3rd or 4th round. That's going to be my official prediction for this fight. So moving on to the card, let's move down, or we'll just move around. Let's take a look at what the next card that we have in front of us. I believe we're going to start it off with, we can start off with Jamal Hill, or we'll start off with Ritter. Let's go back to Ritter real quick, and then we'll go back to Jamal Hill and Jiri. Okay, so here's a couple of things I wanted to mention about this, right? Both scrappy, both have a good ground game, but a slight advantage for D. Ritter in the ground game. Now, keeping this fight standing could help Holland. For example, he could win by points if he just kept playing the jab and the distance game, right? D. Ritter, who's by the way Dutch, has a very sloppy striking, and I mean, not much of a Muay Thai fighter, right? And he's Dutch, but yet he's a world class grappler. Now, Holland is a lot more well rounded. Uh, for me, even if D. Ritter would probably have an advantage if, let's say, the wrestling exchanges start happening. I would say that D. Ritter has, yeah, the advantage of that, even though Holland is the more well rounded fighter. Now, remember when Holland was talking to Khabib while the fight was going on? This is the kind of mind games that he's going to play with you, similar to what, ironically, Khabib did to Michael Johnson, even though he wasn't trying to, he was just being very honest. But with Kevin Holland, there's a little bit more of a bravado behind what he's doing. It's really to try and offset you. Is he going to do that in this fight? I could see that happening. I could absolutely see that happening where he tries to offset him, talk smack to him. But I see this fight as being even. Let me tell you why, right? D. Ritter is a star from a different promotion, although he came as a double champion of ONE FC. They brought him in the not so prime years of his life, right? So if this is why I said if Kevin decides to fight disciplined and methodical and stays on the ball, he can win this, but also very relaxed and unpredictable in the way that you remember how he KO'd Jacare off of his back. So who actually wins in this one? I think I'm going to have to go with D. Ritter on this one, even though Kevin Holland is, you know what? I'm going to go with Kevin Holland by decision. I just think that Kevin Holland is vastly experienced. And by the way, the difference with that is it's a UFC experience, not a regional experience or international MMA experience, which is what Rainier Ritter has going on. I'm going to go with Kevin Holland on this one. So, yeah, by decision, by the way. And it's a 3-round fight. So there is a great possibility that these guys are not going to finish it. Although D. Ritter, as great of a grappler as he is, right, can he do what Khamzat did to Kevin Holland? And the answer is no. So that means that he's going to allow Kevin Holland to have a chance to do what he needs to do. So I'm gonna go with Kevin Holland on this one, right? I just think that UFC experience trumps international experience, and this is a great example of that. I'm going with Kevin Holland by decision. Okay, so coming up next, Moicano versus Beneil Dariush. Okay, so Beneil Dariush. Moicano is much more disciplined with straight shots. Dariush has good scrambles, good knockout power, ground game, top pressure may go to Moicano. Moicano has a win over Benoit Saint Denis. That tells you a lot about him. Dariush never lost a decision ever, but he's been knocked out 5 times. So this is a kill or be killed fighter. I'm going to have to go with Moicano just based on momentum. Okay, so moving on, let's go with Jiri versus Jamal Hill. Now, look, Jiri is sort of like this kung fu guy, right? And Jamal Hill is sort of like this street hood fighter in a way where he's a natural fighter, but sort of learned fighting just based on, I don't know. I mean, he's not particularly athletic, right? You see, Hill was, I'm not sure if it's right to call him a street fighter. He is a formidable MMA fighter and a formidable MMA striker at that. Now, here's the controversy, right? Is Hill a coward for ducking the fade at the PI Center when Alex Pereira gave him gloves to get down, right? Or is it just because he wants to fight for money? Obviously, this guy is a seasoned professional. He's a former champion. This is what he fights for. You can say that he's a coward, this and that, but I don't know, man. He's just trying to fight for money. You can't really blame a guy like that, right? So here's the thing about Hill that I noticed about his particular style, right? I think that Hill is how do I say this? So Hill is very reactive. In other words, he sits back and waits, right? Kind of like a counter fighter in a way. Whereas with Jiri, he's very unpredictable. Now, Hill has power, but no flexibility. You look at the way that he sort of throws his kicks. It's not really somebody that's been kicking for a long time, but effective enough. And also, the injuries here may affect him. Now, look, Jiri uses a lot of traditional martial arts in terms of Tai Chi, doing katas, which, by the way, translates to drills and doing technique work. Now, the whole talk about McDojo, right? It seems that Jiri is sort of, one of the last of these guys, right? Those guys that say, oh, well, my martial arts is too deadly for MMA, like that. Like he's that, but for whatever reason, he was able to transition his particular skills into this world. Now, Hill, look, as I've said earlier, a natural instinct fighter crafted a skill to match that. Jiri is literally the opposite spectrum of that. This fight will take a while when it gets going, right? They're going to feel each other out. Can this fight point that way? Yeah, sort of like a point fighting direction that this fight could take, sort of like a karate match as emphasized by Jiri and his style. You know what? I'm going to go with Hill by a check hook KO and a ground and pound finish. I think Jiri gets caught a lot, and it seems Hill may have adjusted better post getting knocked out. I mean, look, he got knocked out by Alex Pereira, but who didn't? Alex Pereira got knocked out by Izzy, and then Izzy came back and lost to Sean Strickland, only for Alex Pereira to become one of the greatest champions ever right now. So that's who I'm going with. So let's go to the co-main event. And by the way, we're going to go all the way down to cards. I just started with the main card, but then we're going to go to the prelims as well right after this. So let's go with Merab and Umar. We obviously just did the main event. We did the rest of the again, these are not in particular order, so neither will the prelims or the early prelims. But this is what I have for Omar and Merab. Okay, so this is what we got for Omar and Merab right here. Merab has a pace, but Omar might be able to slow him down. Okay, so Omar can push with leverage, with strength, right? With ground control. Omar has good flexibility. He uses it to lead the time, but Merab is going to go forward and he can get offset by Merab, but Merab also likes to circle when he's on his feet. What Omar can do is use his angles to sort of cut his flank out. Omar has good straight kicks, which will prevent Merab from moving forward, at which Merab will sit outside of the striking distance. So let's see here. So this is a hard fight to, honestly predict. A very difficult fight to predict. But I think that Omar is a little over one step over ahead than Merab. I think it's safe to say that. I think that Merab is fast, but Omar is efficient. Merab is frantic and hyper, but Omar is calm and methodical. And I think ultimately that's what's going to win this fight. I'm going to go with the decision, 5-round decision by Omar. I think that he's going to take Merab down more times than Merab can take him down. Sure, Merab's going to put up a good fight. He's going to put up a good account of himself. But by the end of the day, I think that Omar is just the better fighter. And as a result of that, he's going to take this to a distance, if not maybe finish him inside, outside of the championship round. So maybe somewhere in the third or second round. Yeah, that's my official prediction for that one. So that right there is the main card of the whole entire thing, and revisiting the fact that Arman Tsarukyan and Islam fought in a place like this. So now, by the way, this is the card that Islam and Arman had fought in, right? It was April 20th, 2019, and that was during the time when Russia and America were friends. Yeah, so April 20th, 4/20, 2019. That was St. Petersburg, Russia, was the last time that Arman Tsarukyan and Islam Makhachev fought. But obviously, yeah, there's political aspects of that the UFC doesn't want to mention. But nonetheless, here we are in Los Angeles during the time of when all these fires are happening right now. Here we are. We got Arman Tsarukyan and Islam Makhachev fighting once again. I mean, look, this is going to be a very difficult fight for both of them. But I tell you what, this whole entire card is stacked to the ceiling. Okay, I gave you the main card, the co-main event, and the main event, along with the main card. Now let's start with the prelims. Okay, let's go with the prelims for UFC 311. So here we are. Now let's start with the first fight of the night. First fight of the night, Tagir versus Clayton Carpenter. Now look, Clayton Carpenter has a lot of submissions in his arsenal. Tagir is coming off of some losses that, by the way, are split decisions, unanimous decisions. I think that in this fight right here, Tagir is going to pull it off just based on his UFC experience alone. I think Carpenter is a great fighter. I just think that this is not the best possible matchup for him. I just think that, yeah, the experience, the team that Tagir has going on, I see him coming out of this one by unanimous decision. Next fight coming up, Ricky Turquoise taking on Bernardo Sopaj. So what do we know about Ricky Turquoise? Okay, Ricky Turquoise is from Houston. Let's take a look at some of his stats right here. By the way, the trusted website in mixed martial arts, Tapology. Team Alpha Male Fighter, right here out of Sacramento, by the way. Has a Bellator experience, coming off of a loss from Raul Rojas Jr. And then coming off of a win by Kevin Navidad, has a loss over Ayman Zahabi. So now let's take a look at his dance partner, Bernardo Sopaj, straight out of Sweden, the Lion King. Good record, 11-3. Let's take a look at what his past losses were. Okay, so he's got a decision loss. He's been knocked out once, and I believe, is that it? Yeah, I think that's the only losses he's had. Lost his UFC debut. Okay, coming from the AFN, flying knee. So I'm going to go with Ricky Turquoise on this one, based on just the fact that he's coming off of a knockout. You got to wonder how that's going to affect him coming into this matchup. Momentum is a very big thing that I think people really need to understand, right? There's a momentum factor that we got to take a look at here. I think, yeah, Ricky Turquoise is going to have the momentum factor nonetheless. So we're going to go with Ricky Turquoise on that one. So next fight coming up. Let's see here. What is the next fight coming up after Ricky Turquoise? What do we? How about this? Roni Nakamura versus Muin Gafarov. You know what? This is going to be a surprise matchup, right? I think I'm going to go with Muin Gafarov. I think that even though Roni is undefeated, we got to take a look at what sort of experience this guy has coming in here. What kind of 9-0 is he really, right? He's an amateur wrestler. Okay, fights out of Japan. Fought in the road to the UFC, which is sort of like Dana White's Contender Series in Asia. So he fought really nobody, right? And now he's taking on this guy who has a little bit of more experience and bigger names, sort of say, right? Let's take a look at Muin and who he's fought. right? Let's see how experienced he is as compared to the Japanese. So he's a Tajikistani fighter, fought in ONE FC, fought in LFA, fought in ACB. So he's fought around the world. He's fought Saeed Nurmagomedov. He's got submitted by him, lost to John Castaneda, lost to Chad by split decision. John Lineker. See, there's some big names right there. Leonardo Issa. So, yeah, I think his experience is going to go a long way here. I'm going to go with him by decision, right? I just don't think that Renai has really been tested in his career yet. And I think that even though he's talented enough to hang in there with Muin, but I think Muin is going to take this just based on his uh experience with bigger names and being in a bigger show. Not to say that Renai hasn't, but you know what they say, the UFC is a completely different level of things. So that's that. So okay, let's see. All right. So next up, Carol Rosa taking on Aline Perez. So let's take a look at Carlo Rosa here. 135 pounds, both 30 years old, almost virtually identical. Let's see here. Brazilian mixed martial artist, fights out of the Victoria Combat Club. All right. So let's take a look at her last couple of fights here. Has a win over Pinet Kinzide. Irene Aldana loses a decision. Norma Dumont. Sarah McMahon goes to a decision with Sarah McMahon. So never really been knocked out, has been submitted before, but that was quite a while ago. That was towards her return to bantamweight. Then she's had a fight at featherweight. Okay, so let's take a look at her opponent, Aline Perez. Okay, so she's coming off of a win, rear naked choke. Okay, so she has a rear naked choke, unanimous decision, legal knees. This one's going to be a tough fight. Who am I going to take on this one? You know what? I may have to take Alan Perez on this one. Yeah, Alan Perez. This is going to be a very even fight, right? And look, here's the thing: a lot of women fights don't really go to a decision much, right? I mean, they don't really get finished much. I think they're going to have that same trajectory here. I don't think there's going to be a finish here or anything like that. It's going to be one of those fights where they're going to feel each other out. They're going to fight very careful. They're going to fight very professionally, which, again, for a lot of people, is deemed boring, right? There's going to be good scramble exchanges between them, but this fight is mostly going to be contested on the feet, point fighting at best. I'm going to go with Alan Perez on this one. So next fight coming up. What is the next fight coming up now? Let's see here. Okay, so let's see. Now the next fight after that one. Let's see. Okay, so we got Grant Dawson and Deigo Ferreira. Okay, so let's take a look at where Grant Dawson has been these past couple of fights. Okay, so Grant Dawson, 155, a former featherweight, going up to 155, has a win over Rafa Garcia in his last fight back in October. Joe Selesky back in June, gets knocked out by Bobby Green, but has a loss, a TKO elbows in the regional scenes in Missouri. 35-second knockout. Wow. Got knocked out in 35 seconds. So let's take a look at where Deigo Ferreira has been. Okay, coming off of Matthias Grubski, Michael Johnson. He's got a win over Michael Johnson. Look at these names that he's lost to. Split decision over Beneil Dariush, 3-fight losing streak right here. Gregor Gillespie, TKO. Mateus Gamrot gets TKO'd. I think Grant Dawson is going to do this one. I think Grant Dawson is going to win by unanimous decision on this one. So that is my final prediction on that one. I'm going to go with Grant Dawson by unanimous decision. So those are the early prelims. Now let's get to the prelims, okay? Zachary Reese taking on Azmat Bekov. Hold on. Oh, how about this? Jailton, Almeida, and Spivak are in that card as well. Okay, we're going to get to that. Okay, so Zachary Reese. Let's take a look. Reese, MMA. Let's take a look at this guy right here. Zach the Savage Reese, 8-1. Okay, has a loss over Cody Brundage. Jose Medea, he was his last fight, unanimous decision, uppercut and hammer fist against Julian Marquez. Okay, now Azmat Bekov. Let's take a look at this guy right here. Known as the Kingpin, 18-3, fighting out of Russia. So there's a lot of Russian fighters in this card, obviously, because, hey, it's an Islam Makhachev card along with Arman. Why not, right? So so this is his UFC debut. Wow, okay. His UFC debut against Jack Reese. So this is a good fight. You see, this is what I mean, right? This is his UFC debut against Jack Reese. Jack Reese has a pretty good record. But a lot of them were from before the Contender Series. He was in a lot of these really unknown regional fights, right? Out in Texas, out in Peak Fighting. This is a really big show for him. I'm going to go with the Russian on this one. You want to know why? Look, I'm going to tell you why I'm going with the Russian on this one, right? You see, the type of experience that the Russians have over at ACB, it's a little bit different than the regional aspects of what these American fighters are dealing with here, right? I mean, over there, they're already dealing with guys that have had, Olympic backgrounds, guys that have fought in professional Muay Thai and boxing or in Sambo, right? Which, by the way, is an effective way of mixed martial arts, getting ready for an amateur mixed martial arts career transitioning into the pros. I think Azmat is going to win this one. I think he'll probably, let's see, what kind of other losses has Jack Reese experienced before? He got knocked out, so I could see Azmat knocking this guy out. I could absolutely see Azmat knocking this guy out. Now, let's take a look at some wins that Azmat has had over the years. Let's see if what kind of wins he's had over the years. Let's see here. Okay, so what kind of wins does this guy have? The Kingpin. Okay, so he's got 8 submission wins, knockouts. Yeah, you know what? Let me change that. I'm gonna say submission. I think he's gonna submit Reese somewhere in the first or second round. So that is my official prediction on that one. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Azmat by submission in the second round. So, all right. So next one, Sergey Spivak versus Jailton Almeida. Man, I got to tell you, I think that Jailton Almeida has something different that these other heavyweights don't have. You know what that is? I think he's got speed. It's going to be very effective. I think he's going to out-wrestle Sergey Spivak here. Now, I know that Jailton Almeida had that loss against Curtis Blades, but this is not Curtis Blades. I think this is a winnable fight for him. I think he's going to out-wrestle him. I think he's going to take him down. Now, let's take a look at Sergey Spivak, where he's been in the last couple of his career. Now, because look, Jailton Almeida's coming off of a loss, right? But what about Sergey Spivak? Because there's a difference between coming off of a loss and coming off of a loss against a top level fighter. And look, he's submitted Myson Tybura. He's lost to Cyril Gahn. He's lost to Tom Aspinall. No shame in that. But he's also lost to Myson Tybura and Walt Harris. By the way, Walt Harris is known to have been caught with steroids, but nonetheless, Jailton Almeida. Now let's take a look at what Jailton Almeida last did, right? Again, the perfect heavyweight, sort of like an Usyk, John Jones type of heavyweight, right? Has a win over Alexander Romanov back in June. Curtis Blades lost to him. Has a win over Derek Lewis. He's capable of taking this fight into a wrestling angle, right? A wrestling angle, meaning that he could outpoint him. And yeah, I think I'm going to go with a 3-round decision on Jailton Almeida. Look, Sergey Spivak's going to be very difficult to finish. He's going to be very difficult to finish. But that doesn't matter because Jailton Almeida is a very well-rounded fighter. He's fast on the feet. He's got great wrestling, and he's going to keep this on the ground as a result of it. So moving on. Peyton Talbot taking on Roni Barcelos. Look, I'm going to go with Peyton Talbot in this one. This is a fight for him to win. As a matter of fact, I think he's going to get a first-round submission. That's it. How do I know this? Look, they make these matchups specifically to cater to this guy. I understand UFC, toughest sport in the world, toughest organization to fight for, right? But they have their favorites. You've seen it with Conor. You've seen it with O'Malley. This is one of them. This is a first-round submission off top. And the final fight that we have yet to take a look at. Okay, so the final fight that we have yet to look at. Butskan Guskov taking on Billy Elekana. Let's take a look at who Billy Elekana is. 7-1-1. 29 years old. Let's take a look at his record right here. So let's see here. Okay, he's an LFA veteran. He's fought in the PFL. Okay, so this is his UFC debut. All right, this is his UFC debut. So relatively unknown. Okay, he's got some knockouts, decisions. Went to a decision against Daniel Compton in the LFA. Okay, so let's take a look at Bogdan. Let's see where he's been at. So Bogdan fighting out of Uzbekistan. Okay. Fought an MMA series. Okay, so he's got a win over Ryan Spann. He has a loss to Volkan Oezdemir. Jeez, okay. You know what? This actually is going to be a very hard fight to determine. But I'm going to go with this guy right here just based on his experience. I know that it's the UFC debut of the other guy, and you never really want to underestimate anybody on their UFC debut. But I'm going to go with this guy just based on the experience alone. I think you could trust him. He's been in there with bigger names. The biggest loss that he's ever had was against Oezdemir. Before that, it was Vasily. And then a decision loss. Okay, so I'm going to go with this guy by decision. I think he's going to take this to a decision. Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of cards in this fight that's going to be taken to a decision. By the way, guys, that is all of the fights that I had just covered for you. Don't forget to tap in right here for the live stream for UFC 311, which I will be covering this weekend. And I will see you guys in the next content, inshallah. And don't forget to like and subscribe.
starting off the list of good. Oh, actually, he's gonna go into neutral too because this guy's he's wild as shit sometimes. But he's I'm telling you, El-Kheer, he's wild as shit. He's going into neutral for different reasons. He's fucking wild. But he's the type of guy that you would want on your side. I feel like this guy just has an immense fucking loyalty about him. He's a good fucking dude. He is loyalty over royalty, defined to the fucking max. Now we start off the good cat. Yeah, I like El-Kheer. Fucking so what?